Alright, as most of you probably know by now, Remnant 2 got released, and it has been a huge success for Gunfire Games. It's been a game that I really look forward to, and I streamed my entire first playthrough of, and it has lived up to every single expectation I have and more. It is incredibly good. In almost every way, it's an improvement in practically every way, and it is one of the best games I've ever played, I think. It is a game with very few flaws, and the bugs that has been in the game and plaguing the game has been fixed as far as I know, and that is extremely huge for a game that released in 2023. To have everything fixed within a week, like I haven't had any performance drops, but that's just me. I know there's been some problems, but we'll talk about all that and more in this video, so stick around for it, and by the end there'll be a little update on my life as well, because that's kind of cute. Remnant 2 is a Souls-like game. As most of you know, it is the sequel to Remnant 1, and as such, a lot of the gameplay features of Remnant 1 carries over. It's still a third-person shooter, it has classes, but you actually aren't tied to it, we'll get into that later, and it has a lot of guns and a lot of variety in bosses. One of the really cool things about both of the Remnant games is that when your friend is playing it and you're playing it and you're comparing your experiences, you will almost never have the same thing, as multiple bosses are randomized, as in they can be two variants. There are multiple ways of fighting each boss with different rewards and different mutators and attack patterns and so on, and there are a lot of gear to farm. And I think that overall is a huge improvement. Remnant 2 feels extremely smooth even in comparison to Remnant 1 in terms of its gunplay. The gunplay has just been improved across the board. It all feels really good. As in, in Remnant 1 it felt less fluid than it does here, I think is the best way to describe it. It can be a little bit hard to point out specifically, but it's the feel thing. In Remnant 2 it just feels really good to shoot your guns. Remnant 2 also has the great addition, in my opinion, of the archetypes, as they're called. It is probably the best handled class system I have ever seen. In a traditional RPG, and I thought in Remnant 2 as well, you'll be able to pick one, maybe two classes and slap them together to make whatever you want out of them. However, in Remnant 2, they have changed that. In Remnant 2, your classes is like your equipment. You can switch them out as you're going. I think at the moment there's a total of 11 classes discovered, with multiple others data-mined. Some of them you'll have to unlock through playing the game, through secrets within the game. One of them is literally a backrooms Easter egg, and there are a lot of others. One example that I really like is that the Gunslinger, the pre-order class, if you want to unlock that as a non-pre-order player, then you will have to listen to all Mucho's stories by the end of the game. And that's a lot of dialogue, you can skip over it, but I don't know why would. He's a genuinely funny and interesting NPC, and it genuinely is really fucking cool to be around, so I don't know why you'd skip over that, but you can, which gives you an item that you can take to another vendor that then allows you to get the Gunslinger class, which you can then combo with any of the other classes in the game. And there are multiple others like that. There's an Explorer class, an Invader, there are multiple, and some of them are weird and interesting, unique takes on different classes, and some of them are fairly traditional. And I think overall it's a really cool system, because again, you can swap them out. You're never locked down to one thing. So if you pick Challenger and you halfway through regretted not going with Hunter, well, that's great, just go back and buy the Hunter, because you can. With actual in-game currency, they aren't even locked behind a paywall or something, so you don't ever need to play the game multiple times, so you can keep your gear and so on, which is huge. It's very much like the Final Fantasy XIV job system, where you can literally just swap class by switching your equipment. It's great, it's such a good system, and I think it should be the future of class systems, period. As unless you literally can play with whatever and they're only a stat bonus or where you start in the skill tree difference, then this system allows for so much more freedom in almost every single way, as you can switch out your builds on the fly, you can change into whatever ends up being good, which is especially important now that games get patches almost weekly, where the top item can all of a sudden become the worst build in the game, and now you've leveled your character for no reason, and so on. And I think that's really important, and Remnant 2 really does that super well, like really, really fluid. That can also go to all of the gunplay and guns, because most of the guns are locked behind secrets and boss fights. It can almost feel like an exotic quest on every single unlock, as you'll go into this separate area, you'll go through it, and then you'll be met with either a puzzle or a boss fight that you then take out, and then you get your unique gun. That is something that Destiny used to do really well with quests like Wisp of the Worm, and I have not really had that feeling until now with Gunfire, where almost every unlock makes me feel that exact thing, where I'm going into something where I have not a whole lot of ideas on what to expect, and I'll get a unique reward out of it that's usually super useful. I think that's a huge strength to the game that a lot of Souls games does really well, but I really do think Remnant does it so much better. And in addition to that, I think it's also important to mention that the movement is genuinely super good, with the only exception being the dodge roll that can feel sort of weak. I think they should definitely increase the length of it, or at least decrease the amount of stamina it takes, but that's about it. Other than that, I think it's really good in terms of gameplay. Which brings us into the next part of the gameplay, the landscape and the world you'll be walking through, so let's get right into it. Alright, so in Remnant you'll be going through multiple locations. There are a total of 5 worlds, but there are 3 you'll spend all of your time in practically. That is the end of the world planet being Nerud. Then there is Lawson, which I probably butchered, being the old English-ish feeling city, and then there is Ayasha, which I probably also butchered, that is the jungle. All of them are extremely distinct from each other and don't really feel samey at all. However, because they are procedurally generated, at times some of the areas can feel sort of samey, which is then immediately alleviated by the fact that you find a secret, you find some weird mechanic, or you find a ring or something else to explore. Because you see, that's the beautiful thing about Remnant. The game can end up feeling samey at times because of the procedural generation. But, however, even if it feels samey at times, it's often alleviated by the fact that, well, oh, here's a new secret that you never have seen before. I'm on my 73rd hour now, and I'm still unlocking new stuff. I'm still seeing new things for the first time, and there are still bosses I haven't fought. That's an insane amount of time to be able to put into a game and not have seen all the content, despite having beaten the game. And I think that's really one of the biggest, well, parts of Remnant 2, is the fact that you can do that. And it's not hard. You can really go through that many hours of the game and still find new stuff. And even then, I still have goals that I want to achieve, because you could go like, okay, but well, if all the stuff you pick up is like trash, then what's the point? But it isn't. It's still serving towards a build that I want to use in the highest difficulty, which I want to do because that unlocks even more secrets and new weapons. Because that's the exact type of game, well, Remnant is. It's like the exotic quests in Destiny, but they're only here. That's all the game. And I think that's really fucking cool. The different areas are extremely detailed and often surprisingly so, considering the fact that it is complete RNG how they look at the end of the day. And as I've said, they can end up feeling samey, but they almost never do, which I think is important. Because when the areas start to feel samey, that's when the game also sort of dies, and I'm happy to say Remnant doesn't do that. There are a couple of things I'd like them to look at specifically in regards to how things spawn, because there are a lot of items that can only be purchased from one certain vendor that you meet at the very beginning of the game, and at that point, if she isn't selling that item, you'll have to reload the area over and over and over and over, and there are a lot of items. As an example, the thing that I was looking for being the adhesive whetstone, it took me all of 7 hours to just grind that out by just reloading from one area, back to camp, back to the other area, back to camp, and doing that over and over and over. And it was boring. It was worth it in the end, but it was fucking boring, man. And at the end of the day, I think that's like the main hurdle that the that they'll have to overcome with Remnant. I think including a lot more loot out in the world would be a benefit to everybody, and especially if you add it as secrets. There's also areas like that are handmade, being the Labyrinth and Root Earth that you will find around at the end of the game. The Labyrinth is especially beautiful, and I'm a big fan of the area that has these small rock dudes that just charge at you, looking like a Minecraft video. You're just going, "Arr!" And then they run into you, and they're super cute. They are amazing enemies, and I really like them. And I honestly think they are fantastic to fight. Because here's the thing, even when you are making progress in Remnant, you are. Because if you aren't leveling your archetypes, you might be finding gun mods, and they are unique to each world, with like all of the loot being, unique to the worlds. Gun mods as well, and they can range from summoning what is essentially the Half-Life head crabs to outright summoning a tentacle made out of tree from the earth to slap around your enemies, to fire a giant poisonous arrow dart that then makes roots sprout out from the enemy. There are so many things you can do, and those you can just slap on every enemy or every gun. And then there are also the mutators, which further enhances your gun through passive effects, such as the one that I'm using, where I have a 10% chance to apply bleed to a target. And it's insane the amount of customization you can do with them, because with each modifier or mod you get, you can actually change the look of your gun. Straight up, it changes depending on the ones you're using, and I think that's so fucking dope. The boss weapons and so on do have a set modifier, one of them being the gun that I'm using, and I think that's fine. It's cool. And the thing is, when we're talking about aesthetics, because that's kind of what I was trying to get into here, all of the mods that you find in the areas have an aesthetic that fits with the area. As an example, if you find a gun mod on the Root, the futuristic planet that's at the end of its life cycle, it fits to the theme of that planet, it fits to the look of the planet and its inhabitants. And I think shit like that is super important in games, and not enough games do them, where you just slap on a mod and it changes nothing. Here, if you slap a mod on your revolver, it turns it into a space revolver, right? And I think that's super fucking important, and I think that's super fucking cool, right? And it does a lot of these things, where the guns and the aesthetics are always cohesive despite it being procedurally generated, in both the weapons, the enemies, the bosses, and the general area. And I like that. I think that's super nice, and I think that's super cool. And I really don't have anything bad to say about it, other than because it is, procedurally generated. Sometimes you are just going down through the same 4 corridors over and over again, but you're always finding something new, most likely. And I think that, kind of fixes that problem for me, at least. And I know not everybody feels like that, but if I have a shiny thing at the end of the tunnel that I'm going through, despite it being the same tunnel that repeats over and over, it can keep me engaged. And I think in general that's a super good thing. I also think, because we have to talk about it, and it's something that I do enjoy talking about, the overall cohesion of the game when it comes to art, I think it's just there. It all fits within the world of Remnant, because it is a world with multi-dimensions and multiverses, so it makes sense that everything is sort of weird looking at times. I think, however, we should also be talking a little bit about the music in the game, which is what we'll be talking now. So, the music score, in my opinion, varies quite a bit. I think universally all the boss themes are really good, and practically all the themes fits to the area, which is the most important thing. I don't know if it'll be the music that I'll listen to, but it's nice ambience, and I think the fight theme is something that I've heard a little bit too often at this point, simply because the enemies has a tendency to just bomb rush you after you get into a fight. And it's not that it's bad at all, I think it's fairly good. I just think it's very standard in comparison to a lot of the other games, with one exception. In the jungle area, the score is gorgeous, it is perfect. There are these vocals that then starts sing and all of that stuff, it's going on in the background, and I love it, and I'm gonna play you a little bit of it here, so just stay tuned for the next 30 seconds of music from Remnant 2. And remember to leave your opinion on it down in the comment section. So, what do you think? Personally, I think after having experienced most of it, I think all the music fits really well into the game world, and I think it's really cohesive because of it. I think it's the duct tape that brings the rest of it together, you know. I think the music does that really well, where it brings like every other part of the game together and enhances it, which is exactly what it should do. And boss fight becomes that slightly bit more intense. The world becomes that a little bit more interesting to be in. And I think it's really good for that exact purpose. I don't think it's something that I'll be listening to like the world from near or anything like that, but I think this is definitely up there in just the sheer background and like ambience music out there, and I think it's really good for the game. I think it fits really well into the game overall, and I think it's super nice. And lastly, as last note, I want to talk about the story of Remnant 2. So let's get into that. So Remnant 2's story, like a lot of Souls games, unfortunately for a lot of people, it probably isn't going to be the most important thing. I think Remnant 2 does have a really interesting story, and it has some really good lore. However, the main story that is presented to the player is not that good. It follows you, well, helping the woman you saved in the first or second expansion, I can't remember, of Remnant 1. The woman from the snow area, she's out, she has some special powers, and she gets taken into this world crystal. So you have to help getting her back. And as things would turn out, then there are a bunch of other events that ends up, amping it up. In my opinion, it's not that good. However, what is extremely well done is the world you are in, because every world has their own lore and their own stories and so on. I'm not going to spoil any of them because I think they're genuinely the most interesting part of the game story-wise, but I highly recommend reading into some of them and talking with the NPCs and whatnot, because that part of the story in Remnant is really, really solid. An example is that you can read into all the religion of the people on Yasha and what the Ravager, one of the bosses in the game, actually means to them. And I think shit like that is like always super interesting. I really wish more games would do it, but would like put it more front, which Remnant 2 doesn't necessarily do either. They don't like wear it on their sleeve. Unfortunately, I think that could be really cool. I would like to see them do that more in the next expansion. I think they nailed it really well with the Subject 3890, I think it was called, from Remnant 1. I think they nailed the story there in terms of the main beats, but here they unfortunately sort of dropped it, which is then immediately just pushed under the rug because the rest of the game is really, really good. That's practically the end of my review of it. I think Remnant 2 is an overall must-have if you like the first Remnant game, and or if you like Souls-likes. I think it's really good. I think it's one of the best games out there on the market right now, and it's gonna be my GOAT of this year. It's just really good. So for the next little bit of time, I'll be rambling about some personal things that are happening in my life, just so you all know what to expect and why I won't be live for a little bit. Alright. So thank you for watching the video. If you liked it, just, leave a comment, subscribe, do all that stuff. If you want to hear a little bit more about me, then you can stick around. Because I've just gotten accepted into college, and as such I will be moving, and that is obviously gonna affect, well, this entire thing. I'm still expecting to be able to upload YouTube videos. I'm not sure which internet I'll have or the speed of it when I move, so I'm not sure if I can continue to stream though. We'll see about that. I'll update you when I know more, but that's like sort of just a thing to, mention. That's practically it. If you like that, leave a like, do the YouTube stuff. You're smart, you'll figure it out, and I'll see you later.